Hi, and welcome to Automating Your ArcGIS Enterprise Installation session. My name is Mark Carlson, and I'm a system architect in the Geo Experience Center.
And my name is Derek Burke. I'm also a system architect in the Geo Experience Center. All right, today we're going to review automating your ArcGIS Enterprise installation at the current release of our software and also give you a sneak peek at automation, what's coming at 10.9, which is really exciting. We'll summarize what we've covered and provide some handy resources for your back pocket. But before we jump into these topics, let's review some design considerations which will help you plan your ArcGIS Enterprise deployments and automation. This is a great white paper and a good place to start your design process called the ArcGIS System Best Practices. It contains implementation guidelines and best practices. They're more conceptual in nature, which helps guide you through designing your GIS to meet your organizational needs. Before deploying ArcGIS Enterprise, it's important to have a thorough understanding of these needs and what capabilities are necessary to achieve your needs and outcomes. This process is called the Esri method, which we'll discuss more in detail later. From there, you can develop a plan and a roadmap for your implementation. Within the guide, we have a conceptual representation of the ArcGIS system and the conceptual boundaries that separate their functions. We'll be focusing on the infrastructure section, both the components and best practices. These components include the hardware, software, services, and data repositories that are the core of ArcGIS. Along with these components are several best practices on the bottom of the diagram, including load balancing, high availability, workload separation, publication strategies, just to name a few. Let's dive deeper with some of these best practice examples as they relate to infrastructure and ArcGIS Enterprise deployments. Let's take a look at a few of these best practice briefs that relate to technology. Our first is automation, which is fitting for this presentation. It streamlines administrative workflows and repetitive tasks, improving efficiency, consistency, productivity, and reducing risk. In our practice at Esri, within the Geo Experience Center managing hundreds of servers, Mark and I automate everything from software deployments to upgrades to patching. The next two best practices are important concepts to take note of. While simpler architectures work well for many deployments, these topics are advanced configurations that involve multiple machine deployments depending on your business needs. High availability is one of these best practices for helping you achieve your SLA within your organization. It's a series of strategies for minimizing downtime while maximizing performance and reliability. Before designing your implementation solution, it's important to determine how much downtime is acceptable. To increase uptime, one strategy is to reduce single points of failure. While for an ArcGIS Enterprise deployment, this could be deploying redundant systems and then managing traffic to those systems. Lastly, workload separation is the approach of maximizing system performance and reducing risk by optimizing resources such as servers for specific tasks. In our ArcGIS Enterprise deployment context, we will deploy servers that focus on these specific tasks such as analysis or real-time or image processing. Separating these specialized workloads allows you to optimize your infrastructure for those tasks. These are just a few of the best practices in the guide. One critical practice I spoke of earlier that relates to planning is spending some time on developing a geospatial strategy. That's a business-oriented plan that aligns GIS to support its business needs by connecting technology to what those needs and challenges are. So let's dive into planning a geospatial strategy. The first step is understanding. We're trying to understand business goals and challenges of the organization by talking to different stakeholders and users. Business goals are different from technology goals. Technology goals could be the upgrading of deployed software by a certain date, and that's different from a business goal. This could look something like improving collaboration between departments or reducing redundant work. These could be responding to public in a more effective way and wanting the public to stay informed. This is not a lot of technology, but rather business goals and challenges of achieving those goals. From here, you can start to identify high-level geospatial solutions that address those challenges. In planning, you make the jump from how the technology can alleviate these challenges. For Mark and I, when we manage GIS environments within Esri, we're consistently engaging with our stakeholders every few weeks to ensure that what we have planned for both their current state and the future state continues to address their needs. Once you have this list of prioritized solutions, you're ready to act. From here, you can move forward incrementally, which means preparing for the solutions, which is notifying users, defining what the solution is, and then implementation where you build and train users. Finally, you monitor and support the solution deployed and review if it's meeting stakeholders' needs. From an ArcGIS Enterprise architecture perspective, today we'll be discussing deployment options for enterprise-based deployments, which consists of several components, including Portal for ArcGIS, the hosting server, ArcGIS Data Store, and web adapters. Additionally, we'll review deployment of optional components and server roles, including the Spatial Temporal Big Data Store, which is used in supporting GeoEvent, GeoAnalytics, and Tracker. We'll also discuss optional server roles that can be federated to the ArcGIS Enterprise through specific use cases. These could be the need to serve image services or real-time data using GeoEvent Server. From here, I'll turn it over to Mark to review how you can start automating deployment of these components.
Thanks, Derek. Before we demo, let's review some of the options that are available for deploying ArcGIS Enterprise. For our simple automated offerings, we have the ArcGIS Enterprise Builder. This is perfect for that single machine deployment on-premise. Next, for the cloud, we have our ArcGIS Enterprise Cloud Builders for both AWS and Azure. These deployments have the option to either deploy a single machine or a multi-machine enterprise deployment. They also provide deployments for adding server roles to the base enterprise, such as hosting image server, notebook server, and more. You can find more information on enterprise.arcgis.com/en/cloud. We will be demoing these deployments later in this presentation. Next, we have our more advanced automation tools. These include Chef and PowerShell DSC that allow users to fully customize their deployments. These are for the more advanced GIS and programmer professional. You can also review this matrix, which provides details for each of the available automated deployment tools and level of support characteristics. This can help guide you to select the one that best fits your needs. So, let's review in more detail the simple automation techniques that are available to you. We will first review the ArcGIS Enterprise Builder, then demo two cloud deployments, one using the ArcGIS Enterprise Cloud Builder for AWS, and the other ArcGIS Enterprise Cloud Builder for Azure. The ArcGIS Enterprise Builder is perfect for installing on a single machine. You can also upgrade previous deployments that were deployed with the Enterprise Builder. Just make sure you have your portal and server licenses available to use in the builder. So let's check out the user interface for the ArcGIS Enterprise Builder. When you launch the ArcGIS Enterprise Builder, you will be presented the welcome screen. And note that this builder installs a base deployment on a single machine. Next, you will be prompted to review the master agreement. Upon review and acceptance, click Next. Here, you can specify the installation location of the ArcGIS components. Please make sure you meet the minimum requirements. Next, you will specify the username the software will run as. This is where you specify the name of the web context when accessing your portal and server services. The default is portal and server. Next, you will need to provide a valid ArcGIS server license. Now the software is ready to install. Simply click Install and let the builder install the ArcGIS Enterprise components. Once the builder has completed installing the ArcGIS Enterprise components, click Finish and you will be presented with the ArcGIS Enterprise Configuration Wizard. You will then be presented with a notice that the connection is not private. This is because we are configuring the environment with localhost in the URL. Simply click Proceed. Now you will need to supply your portal license. This is the .json portal license file you obtained from the My Esri site. Next, provide the initial admin user that will be used when logging into the portal for the first time. You will also need to enter additional information about the initial account. Here, you can choose the root content directory. C/ArcGIS is the default. Next, review the configuration summary and select Finish. This will start the process of configuring your environment with parameters you have supplied. And when the configuration is complete, around 20 minutes or so, you'll be able to click on the link and view your portal. ArcGIS Enterprise is ready to use. The next two deployments we will review are the AWS Cloud Builder and the Microsoft Azure Cloud Builder. Both of these builders provide a straightforward approach to deploying ArcGIS Enterprise in a cloud environment. Each builder offers deploying a single machine or multi-machine ArcGIS Enterprise deployment. They each also provide deploying and configuring additional ArcGIS server roles to your environment. If you use the builders to deploy, you also have the option to upgrade with the builder in the future. We have found it helpful to review some of the common terminology as it relates to cloud deployments. In both environments, the enterprise is deployed in a virtual network. In AWS, this is represented by the VPC, and in Azure, a VNet. Also, servers are deployed within the virtual networks. A server in AWS is referred to as an EC2 instance, and a VM in Microsoft Azure. If you have a multi-machine ArcGIS server site deployed in the cloud, the machines are controlled by an auto-scaling group in AWS or an availability set in Microsoft Azure. Also, check out the variety of storage options in each cloud environment. You must review the requirements of ArcGIS prior to selecting a storage option. Not all cloud storage options are supported. So, let's first review ArcGIS Enterprise Cloud Builder for AWS. To deploy using the AWS Cloud Builder, you must update DNS records to an elastic IP address. This will be the URL used for your deployment. You also must have your portal and ArcGIS server license files ready. The AWS key pair is required when remotely accessing the deployed EC2 instances from your local machine. You must also subscribe to the ArcGIS images in the AWS Marketplace. The AWS Cloud Builder supports both Windows and Linux deployments. Make sure you have subscribed to the correct version and operating system you are trying to deploy. We will be demoing the ArcGIS Enterprise Cloud Builder for AWS. We will use the builder to deploy a single machine ArcGIS Enterprise environment. We will need to select the AWS region to deploy, choose an existing VPC, or create a new one with the builder. The builder will then use Esri's AWS image that we subscribe to in our AWS account to deploy an EC2 instance. If this is your first time using the builder, you will notice a new S3 bucket that has been created. This bucket is created by the builder and contains the JSON deploy file that will be located in the deployments folder. And the resources folder contains the ArcGIS license files and SSL certificates. The AWS Enterprise Builder will prompt you for these files and upload them for you. Now let's take a look at deploying a single machine deployment in AWS using the ArcGIS Enterprise Cloud Builder for AWS. First, sign into your AWS account by supplying your access and secret keys, or use an AWS profile configured with the machine being used to deploy. I have installed and configured the AWS CLI on my machine. and I will use the default AWS profile that I have configured on my machine, and then select Sign In. Currently, I have no deployments in this account, so let's go ahead and click Add Deployment. You have the option to deploy an ArcGIS Enterprise or a standalone ArcGIS server site. For this demo, we are going to choose ArcGIS Enterprise and select Next. We also have the option to deploy a single machine or a HA deployment. We will stick with the single machine deployment. Additionally, we could add any of the listed servers to our deployment. We could even add a spatial temporal data store to our environment. For this demo, however, we are going to only deploy a single machine deployment of ArcGIS Enterprise. Once we have defined the deployment parameters, we now need to configure the AWS environment. Select the AWS region you want to deploy your environment. Then select either a Windows or Ubuntu operating system. We are going to select the Ubuntu operating system for our deployment. Then we will provide the deployment name. You can also select an existing VPC or let the Cloud Builder create one for you. To create the VPC, click on the plus icon and provide the network stack name. You can also modify any of the network information for your VPC. We are going to accept the defaults and select Create. You will also need to either create or select an existing key pair. This key pair will provide you access to either RDP or SSH into the machine being deployed. Next, we need to configure our Elastic IP address. Now, I have already loaded a certificate, so I will select my certificate and provide the certificate password. Next, I will go ahead and select my Elastic IP that I have configured in AWS. If you did not have this pre-configured, you can use the builder to create an Elastic IP for you. You also need to provide the site domain. This is the URL you will use to access your environment. Just be sure to update the DNS appropriately. Click Validate, and we are good. Next, we want to make sure and provide the username and password for the site admin account. This is the initial admin account that you will use to log into your environment. Next, we'll provide the instance type. As you can see, there are several to choose from. We are going to select the M5X large instance type for our deployment and keep the root size at 200. We will then go ahead and select a license file. You can also upload it here as well. This is the JSON file for Portal, and we'll select our user type creator. And we'll select our server license as well. Now, at the configuration store, we can use Cloud Store or File System. We're going to choose File System. If you'd like more information about the store types, simply click the I, and you'll get more information about your different options. Now we are at the summary page. You can expand any one of these parameters to review and make sure that they are correct. And simply click Create. Since I have recorded this earlier, we can speed up this section that typically takes around an hour to complete. Once the builder successfully completes, you will see a green check mark. This page provides the links to the log files, CloudFormation stack details, and the URLs for your portal and server. Let's select our portal URL and validate we can access our new environment. ArcGIS Enterprise in AWS is ready to use. Now, let's review the ArcGIS Enterprise Cloud Builder for Azure. To deploy in Microsoft Azure, you must have your portal and ArcGIS server license files ready. You also should have your SSL certificate ready. However, the Azure Cloud Builder does allow you to use a self-signed certificate. The self-signed certificate should only be used for development or testing environments. As in AWS, you must also enable programmatic deployments of ArcGIS images from the Microsoft Azure Marketplace. Please be aware that at the 10.8 release, the Microsoft Azure Cloud Builder has reconfigured the cloud architecture for ArcGIS deployments. The new architecture is referred to as version 2 or V2. If you use the Cloud Builder prior to 10.8, those are referred to as version 1 or V1. You can still manage, configure, and upgrade the V1 deployments with the 10.8 release of the Microsoft Azure Cloud Builder. This referenced architecture shown here is for a V2 single-tier base deployment. Notice that we are now leveraging the Azure Application Gateway as our single point of entry. I will now deploy a V2 single-tier base deployment using the ArcGIS Enterprise Cloud Builder for Microsoft Azure. Let's get started. First, sign into your Microsoft Azure account. Then select the subscription you want to use that is associated with your account. If you used the Cloud Builder in the past, you will be able to view existing sites. We are going to deploy a new site, so we will select Deploy a New Site. You can now select the server roles you want to deploy. You can deploy a base ArcGIS Enterprise or one of the listed server roles. We will keep the default ArcGIS Enterprise and select Next. We will now need to either select an existing resource group or use the builder to create a new one. Let's create a new resource group and keep the default region. We will validate our name by clicking the Check Availability and then select Create. We will also leave the defaults for a single tier deployment and update our prefix names with ENT. Next, we need to configure the network options. Let's create a virtual network for our deployment and keep the default network parameters. We also want to use a new public IP. We will update our DNS records with this new public IP. Make sure to include the entire string. In this case, it's demo-ent.eastus.cloudapp.azure.com. Now we need to update our certificate options. Since I have a wildcard certificate I want to use, I will provide the domain name of my environment and then upload my CA certificate. Next, we need to specify the virtual machine credentials and options. I will use the username machine admin. I will use this user when I need to RDP into the virtual machine. Next, we will select the size of the virtual machine. As you can see, you have quite the selection. We are going to keep the default for this deployment. I am also going to update the name with my prefix. Optionally, you can enable automatic system updates or automatic shutdown on the VM. You can also deploy separate jump box to the environment so that you can have RDP access to the environment. Let's enable the remote desktop access. Now we can configure the ArcGIS data store options. We will keep the default relational checked. We can configure the other data stores later if we decide they are needed. Next, we need to provide the license for our deployment and credentials. We can upload our portal.json license file, select the license user type creator, and also upload our ArcGIS server license. We also need to provide a username for the site administrator. This is the user we will use to log into the portal for the first time. Next, add the ArcGIS service account. Other deployment options include using an existing or creating a new storage account for our deployment. You also have the option of enabling Azure monitoring and options for cloud storage. We are just going to use the file system for our configuration and content store option, so we will just click Next. Here, you can review the summary of the deployment. You can even generate a cost estimate. You can see the cost estimate by monthly, hourly, or daily. These values will vary depending on your Microsoft subscription and offer types you have available in your account. Click Finish and the deployment will start. Since I recorded this earlier, we can fast forward. It typically takes around an hour to complete. When the operation successfully completes, you will see the green check mark. From this summary page, you can see how long the operation took to deploy, a link to the log report, and all the outputs from the builder. You can also click the Here link to navigate to your site. ArcGIS Enterprise is ready to use. We just reviewed some simple deployment options. Now, let's review a deployment that uses Chef. This deployment pattern can be customized to help simplify and automate ArcGIS installations within your organization's infrastructure. To get ready for your deployment, you will need to have the following in place. Verify that you have the correct Chef client version for the ArcGIS release you are deploying. For example, the ArcGIS Cookbook Release version 360 supports Chef Client 14. If you want to use Chef Client 15, then make sure and use the release version 361. Also, make sure the ArcGIS Cookbook release you select contains the ArcGIS version you want to deploy. So, if I wanted to deploy ArcGIS version 10.8.1, I would need to use release version 360 or later of the ArcGIS Cookbook. You will also need to have access to the setup files for Esri software. This is the setup application for each component of the Esri software. And you will need the Esri authorization files along with a SSL certificate for your environment. All of the information we just reviewed can be found here on GitHub. If you're not familiar with this site, I would recommend spending some time getting to know this site. It contains a lot of information and resources to help you deploy ArcGIS using Chef. It lists the available cookbooks for ArcGIS that you can explore. Each listed cookbook links to the downloadable files and also provides information about the supported ArcGIS versions, supported ArcGIS software, the platform supported, the dependencies, and even attributes are listed with a description. The wiki page also lists the recipes and even provides tutorials that provide you a step-by-step workflow for installing ArcGIS using Chef. Also from the wiki page, you will find a link to the Chef Client Compatibility Matrix. This metric shows what is supported for the different versions of ArcGIS and Chef clients for each of the Esri cookbooks. For this demo, we will be installing a base ArcGIS Enterprise deployment on a single Windows machine using Chef. So for this demo, I'm going to use a Windows Server 2019 Standard Edition. Let's start by navigating to the ArcGIS Cookbook GitHub site and click on Wiki. Now let's scroll to the tutorial section. Here we will find a tutorial for deploying a base ArcGIS Enterprise deployment on a single machine. This page lists out what will be installed with the ArcGIS Enterprise Chef cookbooks and also provide a list of prerequisites for installing ArcGIS software. Since we will be installing on a Windows machine, we will follow the instructions for Windows. First, we need to install the Windows Chef client. I have already downloaded and installed Chef Client 14. Next, we need to download the ArcGIS Cookbook. Let's simply click on the link, and it brings us to the latest release of the cookbook. So let's go ahead and download our zip file. Now let's go ahead and extract this to our Chef folder. Extract it here, hit OK. Once extracted, we should see these folders, the one for cookbooks, scripts, roles, and templates. So let's go into our roles folder. Here we'll see an assortment of files for different types of deployments. We can have Enterprise on Ubuntu, here's one for the Windows, an HA, and so on and so forth. So for this example, we're going to deploy an Enterprise on a Windows. So we want to go ahead and edit this file. And we can simply open it up with the Notepad editor. Within this JSON file, we can see what version is going to be deployed, run as user for the software, the IIS configurations, the web adapter, data store, server, the web styles, and portal for ArcGIS. So we need to modify all these parameters to match what we have on our local machine. Finally, what this script does is it will run through and execute all of these recipes listed here for our base enterprise deployment. So we need to update these parameters for the key store. So I have all of these prerequisites already on my computer under what I call the Esri software. If I look at my ArcGIS 10.8.1 folder, here I have the data store setup file. Then I have my server setup file and portal and so on and so forth. I also have my authorization files here ready to go, as well as my SSL certificate that I created for this machine. I have already updated a file, so I'm just going to copy over. So the lines I updated in this file are for the key store and the password, the web adapter setup file location, the data store setup location, and the server information. I also updated the web style location and some of the portal information shown here. And we'll go ahead and save and close. Next, we're on step 5, so let's run our command prompt as administrator. And we can simply copy and paste this command. And since I recorded this earlier, we can fast forward through the installation. As you can see here, it has taken a little less than 2 hours for this deployment to install. So let's navigate to our site. Let's exit out of our command prompt. And let's sign in with our site admin user. Our ArcGIS Enterprise base deployment is ready to use. As you can see, our portal has been configured, as well as federating our ArcGIS server. And navigating to our data stores, we can validate our relational and tile cache data stores. For more information on our deployment tools, visit enterprise.arcgis.com and search for Enterprise Deployment Tools. Here you will find more documentation on the different types of tools available: the ArcGIS Enterprise Builder, the Cloud Deployment Tools, and script-based deployment tools. Here you can find the Chef cookbooks and the PowerShell DSC for ArcGIS. You can learn more about the ArcGIS cookbooks by visiting this site. Here you will find what you need to automate your GIS installation and administration. I'll now hand it over to Derek to talk about what's coming in 10.9.
We're really excited about the new enhancements and automation at 10.9. I'll review some of these briefly, but for a deep dive on these enhancements, please see the session Deploying ArcGIS Enterprise in AWS. First off, we have new CloudFormation templates in AWS. We now have templates to help you create an application load balancer or a classic ELB load balancer. There's also a new data store templates for various architectures that you may have. There's one for a single machine data store and an HA data store in either standby mode or a cluster. We also have added a new database templates for Aurora, Postgres, and SQL Server using Amazon's relational database service. with an Oracle template coming in the near future. These CloudFormation templates behind the scenes are actually use our Chef tools to deploy. We'll talk about that a little bit later.
Earlier, we reviewed deploying ArcGIS Enterprise in AWS with the Cloud Builder. This is a simple automation tool with preset configurations. But what if your organization requires a different architecture? What if you need to use a gold image? What if upgrades were easier and more flexible? Our developers have been busy, and when 10.9 releases, you will have more options. Think of the new 10.9 CloudFormation templates as building blocks, and you can build your ArcGIS Enterprise one block at a time. With the new automated offerings for AWS and 10.9, you now have more control when automating your deployment and administration tasks. This example deployment is just one of many configurations you can build with the new CloudFormation templates. Let's review the components. The Esri buckets are still being leveraged. The deploy files bucket contains the ArcGIS license file and the SSL certificates. There will also be a software repository bucket made available. This bucket contains the ArcGIS software to be deployed by the CloudFormation template. This new workflow installs the ArcGIS software selected in the template. Earlier templates prior to 10.9 used an Esri AMI that contained all the software, but only configured the software in the template. And as before, we will still leverage the AWS Certificate Manager for attaching CA certificates to the load balancers. However, with 10.9, you can now take advantage of using the AWS Secrets Manager. So no more transferring passwords as plain text in the templates. You can now use the secrets ARN value instead. The rebuilt CloudFormation template also allows you to bring your own clean image, or if you choose, you can use the default image in the template. I am most excited about the application load balancer. Simply deploy the CloudFormation template for the application load balancer and it is ready to be used. I now only have one domain I need to manage. If I want to add additional server sites, I just need to assign the web context. For example, if I want to add a notebook server to my environment, I can use the CloudFormation template for notebook server and supply the name of the application load balancer and the web context of the notebook. In this example, I can reach the notebook server at https://age.domain.com/notebook. We will also offer standalone RDS templates for Aurora, Postgres, and SQL Server. And we have updated the metadata tables to support Oracle RDS as well. Look for an Oracle template in the near future. This new automated offering for AWS gives you, the user, more freedom to incorporate automated deployments for ArcGIS software. You can use AWS SSM for upgrades, patches, and more. Please visit the Deploying ArcGIS Enterprise in AWS session for a deeper dive into these new automation deployment patterns and for demos using the new 10.9 CloudFormation templates. The ArcGIS Enterprise Builder in Microsoft Azure also has some new features. Remember at the 10.8 release, this builder introduced the Microsoft Application Gateway that is used in the version 2 architecture. And at the 10.8.1 release, it now offers support for upgrading both the version 1 and version 2 architectures. It also now supports the different modes for the tile cache and supports for auto shutdown. At the 10.9 release, the Cloud Builder now requires the .NET Framework 4.8 to be installed to run the Cloud Builder. You will also be able to deploy a mission server site using the builder. If you have a need for GeoEvent, just be aware that you can use the builder for a single machine deployment. The chef recipes have always been available to be used to deploy ArcGIS software on-premise or in the cloud. At 10.9, we are introducing what we call chef templates. These chef templates are used in the newly developed AWS CloudFormation templates. However, you can think of these templates as pre-filled out forms that simplify your effort to deploy ArcGIS in your desired location. Use these chef templates to automate your deployment on-premise or in the cloud.
Also new at the 10.9 release is a new cloud-native deployment option for ArcGIS Enterprise. It's called ArcGIS Enterprise on Kubernetes. It's based on microservices and containerization. It's designed to optimize scalability, resilience, and maintainability using this microservice architecture. This deployment option is by no means a forced replacement for using Windows or Linux, but rather if you know you need a containerized Kubernetes-based version of Enterprise, this could be for you. It's planned at the release date to support Amazon EKS, Microsoft Azure AKS, and the on-premise solution of Red Hat OpenShift. As a sneak peek into this new deployment option, here is a logical architecture of ArcGIS Enterprise on Kubernetes, which initially comes as a base deployment. Each of the components you see here, such as the map server or feature server, are all containerized as microservices. These components can be optimized for your needs. You can adjust the CPU or memory all individually rather than for the entire environment. As the installation comes as a base deployment, you can federate this deployment on other GIS servers on Windows or Linux. From a deployment perspective, installation scripts are included and can be used in automating your deployments. There are several sessions at the Developer Summit this year on ArcGIS on Kubernetes. To deep dive further into this deployment option, please see the session ArcGIS Enterprise on Kubernetes, an Introduction, and ArcGIS Enterprise on Kubernetes Technical Concepts. Okay, we've covered a lot of topics today. We've discussed best practices of architecting and guidance in how to design your deployments. We've walked through how to use simple automation tools from on-premise options like the ArcGIS Enterprise Builder to cloud options like ArcGIS Enterprise Builder for Azure and ArcGIS Enterprise Builder for Amazon Web Services. We also reviewed Amazon Web Services CloudFormation templates. We then walked through advanced scripting automation using PowerShell and Chef. And lastly, all the exciting features coming at 10.9, including a new deployment option of ArcGIS Enterprise on Kubernetes, and all of the enhancements with CloudFormation templates and Chef. We want to thank you for attending this session. Here's a few helpful resources to keep in mind when planning to automate your ArcGIS Enterprise deployments.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining our session on automating your ArcGIS Enterprise. We've got Derek Burke and Mark Carlson here to answer the questions, and thank you all for questions that you did put in there. So, Mark, to start off, we've seen a lot of questions about upgrading. Can you talk about some of the approaches and software techniques that you've used and which has and what has worked well for you?
Sure. And also, just to kind of plug, we also have a session out there for upgrading your ArcGIS environment as well. So if you want to check out that video, that's available to you during the summit. And just as an overall, if you use the same tools to upgrade as you did to deploy. So if I use Chef to deploy my 10.8 environment, I'd use Chef to upgrade that same environment to 10.8.1. The cloud builders that we have out there, they also will upgrade that same environment for you. The CloudFormation templates that we have available, we have a step-by-step instructions available online for how to go about upgrading an environment in those the cloud deployments. And also PowerShell. If you use PowerShell or any of the scripting, as long as you use that same protocol as you did to deploy to upgrade, we support those workflows.
All right, thank you, Mark. So Derek, we got a couple questions. So one of them was, can you upgrade an existing ArcGIS Enterprise instance from 10.8 to 10.8.1 with the Enterprise Builder for a single machine?
Yes, and the answer is yes. As long as you use Enterprise Builder, it's not a problem. Kind of just what Mark was talking about. You upgrade, using the same tools that you use to deploy. So the answer is yes.
Cool. All right, thank you. Mark, back to you. So quite a few questions on Chef and scripts that are available. Can you talk about where they can get them from?
Sure, and I believe I replied back to one of them that I think is in the public chat there. All the chef cookbooks are at our GitHub site, github.com/Esri, and you can find all of the cookbooks out there. Just keep in mind that the chef cookbooks version that you download it matches the ArcGIS Enterprise deployment that you want. So we have that list out there on our GitHub site that kind of walks you through which cookbook you need for which version of ArcGIS that you want to deploy. In the wiki, we actually have some tutorials out there as well. These tutorials will walk you through even deploying a multi-machine deployment using Chef. And there's also a tutorial for upgrading using Chef for a single machine deployment. And you can take those same concepts and apply them to your environments as you would like. But there's some really good documentation on that GitHub.
All right, great. Thank you, Mark. All right, Derek, back to you. Does the ArcGIS Enterprise Builder backups, or does it back up existing VMs before upgrading the environment?
Yeah, thanks, and great question. It does not, and that's where you would, kind of employ, a good backup procedures in order to do that. So, if you take a look at that same upgrading video that Mark was just talking about, we have a, kind of a bolded list of things that we do whenever we upgrade, environments, especially in the cloud. So it's using WebGIS DR, and then also, of course, taking snapshots of your VMs, whether you're, in Azure or whether you're in AWS. So it's kind of a multi-step approach of just, kind of backing up.
Cool, thank you. All right, so Mark, we know that Enterprise 10.9 is coming out in May of 2021, next month. What has you excited about that upcoming release?
Yeah, and I think I saw a question come through that kind of addresses what I'm excited about. We've totally revamped the CloudFormation templates that are going to be available. If you've noticed before, every time that you try to deploy using our CloudFormation templates, it was basically a different site, and if you had a multi-machine site, you'd see like these elastic load balancers for each one. However, starting at our 10.9, what we're going to release is that we're actually going to leverage the AWS application load balancer. What does that mean is that we have a single point of entry that everything comes through. And as we add servers and federate servers to our ArcGIS Enterprise site, that goes through that same application load balancer. And it's the web context that points us to the other federated server roles. So that we have that, again, that single point of entry that we can use to deploy. And this is huge. We also divided out the CloudFormation templates to where if you just want Portal on a machine, you can use it just to have Portal on an EC2 instance. You can take your hosting server, put it on its own EC2 instance. And the best thing about it too is that you can also bring your gold image. These are like your AMIs that your organizations have signed off on. IT has put all the security measures and vetted that EC2 instance, that AMI that's out there that you need to use. You can now bring that into our CloudFormation templates and deploy our software on top of that. And you're only deploying what you need. So that's a pretty big step for us on there. And also we're going to have CloudFormation templates for the RDS instances as well that are coming out. So look for those. It's a pretty big step for us, especially using the application load balancer. And then one more thing that I like to note is that we actually are going to be using the secrets manager. This is where you would type in your user ArcGIS and then whatever password that you want. In previous templates, it would be passed as plain text. It would look like it was hidden. However, now all you have to do is simply enter in the ARN value of within your secrets manager. So it's a little bit more secure when you're deploying Esri into the AWS environment. Along with that, I'd like to kind of maybe also address the Azure deployments. I know we had a couple questions there too about the Azure Application Gateway. I believe it was at 10.8.1, Esri introduced our version 2 if you use the Azure Cloud builders. So at version 2, we go ahead and we use the Azure Application Gateway. This is, again, that single point of entry, kind of like what I just discussed about, our new offering at the AWS instance. So we just have that application gateway. It's all pre-configured for you if you use the builder. And then again, you can walk through that builder and establish whatever configurations that you need to deploy in Azure as well.
Great, thank you, Mark. So Derek, next question is for you. And this is probably more of a philosophical question, but when should an organization choose to use a Chef cookbook versus, let's say, a cloud builder template?
Yeah, another good question. I think the cloud builder templates are really, they're really great for deploying and upgrading, for that matter, based on some kind of pre-configured settings that we've provided. You can also edit all of those, of course, for some of the at least from the command line perspective, or from if you're using AWS, the command line CLI, you can obviously edit those files. The cloud builder itself, if you're using the GUI, that's sort of like what's been prescribed within AWS or within Azure. So you're deploying a standalone enterprise instance, or an HA instance, or you're deploying server roles to a something that's been already prescribed. And then if you move into Chef, you have even a little bit more control. So it's sort of like a scale of how much you want to edit and kind of make these make your deployments to your own architecture. So from on one end you have the builders, whether it's the enterprise builder or the cloud builder, and that's kind of more set in stone. And then the further you go down the path of using some of these scripting options, whether Chef or AWS CloudFormation templates, or the DS, any of the PowerShell, you have more freedom to kind of change your deployment. So it just depends on how much you want to change the architecture.
Great. All right, Mark, next question is for you. And knowing that you support a lot of servers at Esri and 10.9 is coming up, what are you going to do to prepare for the big server upgrade that's coming down your way?
Okay, so I've actually used all of these different types of deployments to stand up these environments. I know I actually manage over 200 servers, so you can imagine the complexity that we have that we're managing. So I want to be taking my backups, my snapshots, using the WebGIS DR tool, just to make sure I have all of those in place, and then using how I deployed is how I'm going to upgrade, and that's how I'm going to stand it all up. But it does take some organization and planning to move forward with it. We have all of our teams that we support, so we just kind of get on their schedule, and then we just go and hit the button to upgrade. So that's what we plan on doing. That's worked for us in the past. And if something does go haywire, or for whatever reason it is, the backups are so important to take before you venture into it. And what I also do is, before we do a major, like all of these components that we're upgrading, I'll just make sure and I'll go ahead and validate a couple environments that I've backed up and restore them to like a separate area that I can just validate that my backup was completed, and that I can restore it from a backup. And once I know that and my backup procedures are good, my restore procedures are good, then I'll go ahead and continue on with those upgrades.
Great. Thank you, Mark. All right, Derek, next question is for you. So we saw earlier today, there's quite a bit of talk about Kubernetes, and who should be considering using Kubernetes versus who should not be?
Great question. Yeah, we're really excited about Kubernetes, especially as Mark just talked about. We're managing so many environments within Esri, a team that we're on. So yeah, I think if you're an organization that's already using Kubernetes in-house for other business applications, this is absolutely something to take a look at. If you're just thinking about using Kubernetes in the future, from your organization, that's something to maybe learn some more about Kubernetes, take some training on it, and then think about where you can implement it within your GIS environment. But it's really, you've probably heard, I should probably plug the Kubernetes sessions as well. There's an intro to ArcGIS Enterprise and Kubernetes, and then there's a technical session. Both of those are excellent to kind of dive a little deeper into the technology. There's also a road ahead where they'll be talking about Kubernetes. And of course, this morning there was a plenary session where there was a whole probably about 10 or 15 minutes devoted to ArcGIS Enterprise and Kubernetes. So yeah, if you're an organization that's already using it, something to definitely take a look at. If you're an enterprise, if you have an EA agreement, that's also part of it as well for this release right now. What you'll probably hear over and over again is that it's a cloud native solution. It's been designed for scale, resilience, and maintainability. So if you have kind of high workloads and high SLAs that you need to maintain, this is something that could definitely be useful. So yeah, it's a pretty exciting addition to ArcGIS Enterprise.
Great. Thanks, Derek. All right, so we got about 2.5 minutes left before this session comes to an end. Mark, is there any last topic you would like to talk about?
No, I just know that there was a lot of questions on upgrading. So like I said, I would highly suggest watching our video for upgrading. And for these really specific questions that we do have, if you want, go ahead and use the Ask the Expert. We do have people on standby that will address some of these issues. Some of them is more of a discussion, I think, that we would want to better understand the environments to give you a clearer answer on some things. Check out the automation. I think in our polls, it looks like, anyways, I think a lot of our audience members are on premise. So I'd be kind of curious, about using Chef or PowerShell. Definitely try to get some automation into that, into your processes. It makes upgrading in the future a little bit easier as well. And but yeah, so I think these tools that we have out there have been vetted. So check them out, and that's all I have.
Great. Thank you. Derek, same question or same comment to you. A couple minutes remaining. Any last things you'd like to talk about?
Sure. Yeah. Just two things. I'll just reiterate what Mark's talking about automation. It's saved us a lot of time, and reduced a lot of risk whenever we're doing deployments or upgrades. So the time it takes to work through and build out automation processes in your organization, it pays back dividends on many levels, including lower costs for a number of things, especially time and just making sure environments are available when you need them, those sorts of things. The other one I just wanted to mention really quickly was just about Chef. There's been a couple of questions about Chef and pricing. And yes, there is there is a fee for using Chef. So I definitely take a look at the Chef product page for that. Yeah, it kind of, there's a couple of questions as well on Chef Server, Chef Client, like which one can you use? You can use Chef Client, absolutely. If you want to centralize a lot of your Chef activities within your organization, then Chef Server, would be a good option. Definitely check out the Chef website for kind of more information there. And there's a couple of blogs that we have as well. We'll link a few of those in the Q&A. I think with that, it looks like we're right on time here. Mike, if you want to close out.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining, and thank you to Mark and to Derek for answering all these questions. Thank you for coming, and have a great rest of the Developer Summit.